What's up guys, today I wanted to cover the principle of squash and stretch, and primarily within the game of Spider-Man PS4. Now, of all the superhero characters that I can think of, besides, Plastic Man, Spider-Man definitely utilizes this principle to the max. I mean, you definitely won't see Hulk hitting this pose anytime soon. Now, another game that uses this principle to the fullest has got to be Jak and Daxter. This game, whether it's, from the combat to the jumping, they really implement the principle of squash and stretch in everything the characters do. So moving forward, I wanted to cover the Spider-Man PS4 demo. So right off the bat, he jumps off the building and goes into this great stretch pose, and then he goes into his original pose, which is essentially a squash pose. And if you look at the web swinging, if you break it down to its core, it's essentially nothing more than a bunch of poses of squash and stretch. And that's really what it is. I mean, even from his web zipping, they managed to get in a great, he squashes, to shoot out the web, he stretches as he pulls himself forward, and then goes back into the squash pose. Now, one great mechanic that really encases the whole principle of squash and stretch in the game is actually the web zip to perch to jump mechanic. And this mechanic is seen when he shoots a web zip, he goes in this great squash pose of shooting the web, and then he directly goes into this stretch pose where his limbs are just completely stretched. Upon hitting the live post, he goes back into the squash, and then he jumps from any direction you want into the stretch pose, and then goes back into his original squash pose. And that pose sequence is just really great, combined with the camera, combined with the visual effects, the audio. It really gives this sense of really going fast, and it really is a great thing to see as an animator. Now, the game also implements squash and stretch within the combat. Not to the extent of Jak and Daxter, where it's almost, looking like, smear frames, but it gives a great squash and feel for a character who is so flexible, who is so malleable. We first see this squash and stretch when he's, hurling objects. He goes into the squash pose. It's not a real hardcore squash pose of him swirling the object around, but then he goes into the stretch pose, jumping up off the ground, and then squashes when he throws it. In addition to that, you see the squash and stretch in many of his combos. And many of his combos is just really a squash pose, a stretch pose, a squash pose, and a stretch pose. But they give this very this springy action to Spider-Man, which we've seen in the comics and we've seen in the movies, and they really fully flesh this out in the combat. And I think that's a great testament to the quality that is at Insomniac Studios. Now, regardless of whichever finisher he does, you still get this great sense of squash and stretch. And if you just frame through many of the poses, you can see where, okay, that's a squash pose where he's going to now, coil up and then bam, attack the person. And playing it is, it's almost as fun as watching it from an animator's perspective. Anyways, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys actually, go through frame by frame and see a lot of these poses and a lot of the squash and stretch that's within them, just for your own, research and for your own knowledge, and use that and implement it in your own animations. As always, until next time, guys, keep animating.